Hi, I'm Jen.
And I'm Hansa.
And if you are unfamiliar with this channel, we are two native Californians who have been living in Prague, Czechia for the past 9.5 years. And recently, this summer, we went home to America after, how long? When was the last time we were in America?
2 years for both of us.
2 years. So we experienced what you might call reverse culture shock. And that is experiencing things that we mostly used to experience back when we lived in America, but were somewhat shocking to us after adjusting to Czech life. Okay, so the first thing that I noticed in America was right when I got off the plane in LAX that I couldn't take a cab from the curb anymore. I had to take a shuttle bus to get to the station where you get the cab. And on that shuttle bus, I get on and there is a woman who very loudly, loud enough for the whole bus to hear, says to the guy sitting next to her, "Where'd you get your vaccine? How did that go? Which one did you get?" My first thought was, we've got a talker. And, thinking it was like a crazy person. But then really quickly after that, she and the seatmate start having this very loud conversation about all of their vaccine stories and COVID stories. And then they start engaging the people in the seats in front of them and in back of them. And before you know it, the entire bus is engaged in this conversation. And I am hugging the window, praying for privacy and that nobody asks me about my medical history. So this is something that you just don't do in the Czech Republic. What is interactions with strangers like in Prague?
Yeah, I've never asked a stranger on the street where they got their vaccine and what flavor of vaccine they got. I think, with the exception of asking for the occasional directions, it's basically, walking past, especially on the Prague public transit. It's so peaceful and quiet. Everyone brings their book. They're just reading and keeping themselves.
I think in the United States, especially in the South, but in California as well, there's just almost an uncomfortability with being in a confined space with a stranger and not talking. Like, people feel compelled to start a conversation or maybe even just bring up a topic that they have an opinion on so that they can tell you what they think.
Right. So if you want Americans to be quiet, you have to tell them, which is why the beginning of all our movie films, all in movie theaters, they have to say silence is golden. Remind the viewers. So.
Don't talk about the plot with the guy sitting next to you. The next thing I realized is that I've really, on this channel, been comparing apples to oranges because Prague, although it's a capital city, is so much smaller than Los Angeles. Just the distances you have to travel. And so I'll show you here a picture of Prague, and this is the area that Hansa and I sort of transverse on a weekly basis, sometimes even smaller distances than this. And in Los Angeles, in the few days I was there, the distances we had to travel, we were just burning through gasoline in our cars.
Yeah.
On the first morning I was there, I wanted to go get coffee at the local coffee shop where I would go when I was in high school. And I remember it being just a short drive away. And so I thought, I don't have a car, I'll just run over there. And I put on my jogging clothes, and it took me 35 minutes to jog to the closest coffee shop.
And then you fill up on hot coffee and you get to run 35 minutes back. So
right.
That's over an hour and a belly of hot coffee.
Yeah, and it's not like we're living out in the countryside. This is a very dense part of Los Angeles. It's just that there's nothing within walking distance.
Yeah, and I can think of 5 coffee shops within a 5-minute walk from our flat here in Prague. So that's and we have our own machine.
But I was just vastly underestimating the time it would take. Like, I would say to my brother, let's not drive, let's walk to this place we had to go. And he was like, are you sure? And then it took like 45 minutes when it's like this close on a map.
Yeah.
So distances, dramatically different in the US. Also the distances that people are like willing to travel to get something.
True.
Like if you have to go to the supermarket and it's 5 miles away, you might forget milk and just go back 5 miles instead of just like foregoing the milk that day.
Yeah, yeah.
On this run that I was going to go on to the coffee shop, before I left, my mom said, don't run on the sidewalk, you could trip and fall.
I think they call them pavements.
That's British.
Oh.
We've been here a while.
When I took my driving test, I had a hard time figuring out what the pavements were.
Yeah, I think that's British English.
Yeah, okay.
Don't run on the sidewalk, you could trip and fall. And I thought, well, this is what this is for. But then I get out on the sidewalk and I realized what she was talking about. They are giant slabs of cement, and they were really like cracked and kind of like this, right? And I mean, I assume some of it's from earthquakes, but most of it is because of trees that the city planted growing and buckling up the sidewalk. And our whole lives, the city was responsible for fixing these sidewalks. But I recently learned that in Los Angeles, it's now the owner of the house that is responsible to repair these sidewalks. And it costs thousands of dollars. So they just don't do it.
What if they don't?
If someone trips, you know, America's quite litigious. If somebody trips and falls on the sidewalk in front of your house, they can sue you. So it was actually...
Lawyers.
It was actually safer for me to run sort of in the gutter of the street than it was to run on the sidewalk. So this sort of depleting infrastructure became apparent.
At least you got sidewalks. I mean, we went for that run in Colorado, and we had gone, 2 kilometers, and then the sidewalk just ended. So you had to run. I think we ran up into a parking lot.
Ran on some dirt.
It dead ended. Then we had to run back, and then we had to run through a dirt path to try to get. And the only sidewalk was now on the other side of the street, which was 8 lanes of traffic away. So if you wanted to run safely on a sidewalk, you had to dodge cars.
Right.
So you end up just running on some worn dirt path because they just gave up at a certain point.
I mean, that's the thing. When we were running, we didn't cross anybody's path. I think we saw 1 or 2 runners or even pedestrians the whole time we were running in all these places. And so maybe they don't want to spend money because nobody's actually using the sidewalks.
That's true.
Now there's a lot of construction, but Prague, the city of Prague, keeps their sidewalks in very good condition, and they're always making sure that they're mostly making sure that there's no obstructions in the sidewalk.
Right. You could fall in a hole, but
that's your own fault. So one thing that was totally overwhelming and shocking was the American supermarket. And the Czechs will say, oh, we've got all the same things you can find in America, but you just can't understand what we're talking about unless you go to an American supermarket. The choices, 57 types of cereal, entire aisles that are just chips or crisps, British English, entire aisles of flavored snack foods to choose from.
Half an aisle with different types of pickles. I mean,
different flavors of pickle.
Here we only have
different sizes of pickle.
One type of pickle. We don't have dill and bread and butter and sweet and sour and spears and stackers and chips.
Yeah.
And that's a shape of pickle. So we've got all the shapes and all the flavors, half an aisle of just pickles, which,
I mean, and so here's the thing. Choices, what's wrong with that? Like, I was walking down the aisles just kind of not picking up anything because I didn't know what. I was just like, this is totally new. I didn't know that this type of food existed. But I kind of had like paralysis because I came for one thing, but it's like, oh, maybe I should buy all these other things.
Yeah, the paralysis of choice.
Yeah, exactly. So, and also here in Czech Republic, we just generally buy like the basic ingredients to make something. But in America, there's so many packaged foods, and not even just the unhealthy ones that we were used to in our childhood, but there's like healthy packaged foods, and you just end up buying stuff you didn't even really need.
Yeah. But it's all ready to go, so you can continue to work the 60 to 80 hour work week. So.
Right. You don't have to cook anything. Yeah. You just reheat it in the microwave.
No need to even own a kitchen knife.
Yeah. So that was overwhelming. Kind of like, I don't know, a child at a toy store or something. It was just like, wow. So one of the positive reverse culture shocks for me personally was the checkout lady at the supermarket. Checkout ladies in the Czech Republic are special. They're in their own category. And in America, they're totally different. So let me ask you, when you go to check out with groceries in the Czech Republic, what are you thinking? How are you feeling? What are you doing?
I'm in panic mode, honestly. I mean, in America, there's a checkout person and then there's a bagging person, right? They've created jobs and there's two people to do this process. In the Czech Republic, there's a checkout lady, the pokladna, and then I am the bagger. The problem is that it's not an equal amount of time to scan an item and to bag an item. So especially when you bring your reusable bags, so they've started to get worn and collapse. So you're just trying to shove this in. So in the Czech Republic, as soon as the person in front of you is done, you got to whip around to the bagger side and be there, open up that bag and hope that some of the stuff just shoots into the bag.
Because she's just throwing it.
Yeah,
she's throwing it.
I don't know. She's like, she works on commission or something. She's hourly. Just slow it down, relax.
Yeah. And if you don't finish before she's ready for your payment, she will just do this. She will just sit there and watch you. She won't offer to help. I'm speaking in generalities, but I could count on one hand the amount of times the checkout lady has helped me bag in 9 years.
Yeah.
So in America, the checkout lady and the customer have a very special relationship that lasts the duration of your interaction together. And she will not only not pressure you to go quickly, she will help the bagger if there needs to be more time to bag your things. She will offer you recipe advice as she scans the ingredients you've purchased, or maybe suggest a wine pairing or something to go with the Coca-Cola that you've just bought. She will compliment you on your clothes. She will ask you about your plans for the weekend.
And I can remember when I was in university, I would always go to the same grocery store because the checkout ladies were just always so nice to me, you know?
Nice, yeah.
What's up, hun? What you doing this weekend?
Exactly. And I think the Czechs might think that this is sort of superficial, small talk, pointless talk. And it is, but it kind of is like we rely on it to just brighten our day. And like, why does an interaction have to be stressful and negative? Why? When it can be like easygoing and positive.
Yeah. So next time you're at the Albert or the Tesco, ask the checkout lady what she's doing this weekend. See how that goes.
Don't do that. On the other hand, one of the service industry workers that maybe is a little bit too friendly for my taste was the American waitress or waiter. So when I went to a restaurant with a friend that I hadn't seen in 15 years, we were so engaged in talking to each other that we didn't even order drinks right away. The waitress kept coming by and we hadn't looked at our menu. Then when we had our drinks, we were chatting and didn't want to be interrupted, but she kept coming by to see if we wanted to order food, and maybe she was just trying to do her job. But then we got our meal, and shortly thereafter, she came by and said, "Just to let you know, I'm going on my break. This other server will take over for me. Is there anything else I can get you?" And we said, "No, it's fine." And then she did this 2 more times where she came by and said, "Just a reminder, I'm going on my break. Is there anything else I can get for you before I go?" And we had both been servers, my friends and I, and so we knew what she was doing. She was trying to get us in the middle of our meal to pay for the meal, therefore we could tip her. And I just found this so invasive. First of all, she had interrupted us so many times, to ask us how we were doing.
I was doing well.
And then it was all about getting her tip. And my thought was, don't worry about it. He'll get the tip this time and you'll get it next time. So the servers are overly friendly, but I feel like it's very tip focused.
It's very tip focused. And they've automated the tipping system. It's crazy. So, I know I go for coffee or something like this, and you pay on they usually have an iPad because you still have to finger sign.
You have to finger sign for your credit card.
Yeah, it's like, I swear I will pay this bill. I mean, but right before you sign, there's a pop-up screen. It says, would you like to tip 18%, 20%, or 24%? Or other, which will send you down a choice tree, which will take you 3 extra minutes to just get to 10%, or I want to round up like a check.
Yeah, that happened to me. And it's not just at a restaurant where you would normally tip. That happened to me when I went to go get coffee, and I went to the front of the coffee line, like picture a Starbucks, and all the woman did was take my order and pass it to her colleague, and then the computer's asking me what enormous amount I want to tip for this service.
And this is on top of the tax, which is not listed in the price. So when you go to pay, unlike Czech Republic where the tax is in the price, you go to pay for your $2 coffee, they want 25% on that, so that's $2.50, plus you're going to get the tax, which is, the state and local tax. So you could end up spending $2.75 on a $2 coffee.
And it's just you feel like people are just,
we call this sticker shock.
Sticker shock. It just feels like everybody, like you're just being asked to give money for various things. And I just felt like I was bleeding. I was hemorrhaging money. How did you feel?
I just turned my brain off. It was too traumatic.
Yeah.
So it's the only way to survive. And
one thing I will say about tipping a server in a restaurant is that when I was young and doing it, they paid you a lot less than minimum wage, maybe like $4 an hour, because you got these tips to live on. But now in the state of California, they have to pay servers $14 an hour, the minimum wage. And your tips are on top of that. So it's not like they need the tips.
They didn't really recalibrate the tipping culture after the state implemented a proper living wage for all employees.
I felt like even going to pay for gas, like the gas guy was going to be like, how much do you want to tip me for this service? Like you just feel like everybody's asking for a tip.
Yeah.
So we're paying a lot for everything because we're on vacation, but it's weird because we're staying with friends and family, but things are just very expensive. And one of the things we noticed was we went to a Dodgers-Giants game, and there's vendors in there that sell, food and beverages. And what did you think of the
baseball?
What did you think of the prices of the beer and such?
I mean, it's astronomical. It's like once they have you in the stadium, you're a captive, and the price of a beverage goes up 5 times. I mean, and could you imagine, you go to a hockey game in Czech Republic, and outside the stadium right now, it's, 40 crown for a kozel, and you go in the stadium, it's 40 crown for a kozel. Imagine if you went in the stadium and it was 220 crown for a kozel. What do you think the
Czechs would riot?
The Czech hockey fans would do.
They would riot.
But
that's outrageous. When you go to a vendor in a Czech sporting event, it might be a little bit more expensive.
It's not.
Is it really the same?
It's really. Last time I mean, it's been 2 years since we had hockey with fans, but last I remember was 40 crown outside the stadium, 40 crown inside the stadium.
Yeah, it's just assumed in America that the minute you go to a concert or a sporting event that you're gonna just pay like triple or more for the cost of things. I got a little tiny 0.3 cocktail in a can, and it was $14.
That's 300.
It was outrageous.
300
it's like 300
Czech
crowns for a little 0.3 cocktail with like a little bit of vodka.
It's 100 crown per 100 milliliters.
I know. So things are more expensive, obviously, in California, but the difference between buying it out at a restaurant or like in a supermarket compared to a sporting event was massive.
Unbelievable.
One kind of newish, strange thing that I noticed was in chain restaurants, it's now the law that they have to put the calorie of each food on the menu, the calorie count of each food. And I don't know how I feel about that. How do you feel about that?
I like it. I think that it, when it's right there in your face, and they ask you, do you want the combo? And you look up and you're like, the fries add 300 calories. I think it's easier to say no. So I actually like it.
Yeah.
As much as it's, it
kind of spoils the mood, though, don't you think?
Yeah, but I mean, I understand, and it's probably good for people's health, and for the people that are on restrictive diets or something, it's easier to pop that put it in the app, you know?
Put it in the app to scan the calorie
right.
counting. Yeah, I'm all for more information, and I'm all for health, so I think it's like a good thing, but it like really confronts you. Like I was getting this salad, and it said 1,100 calories for a salad. Like it really puts in perspective what you're eating. But something else that they had listed at these chain restaurants, I saw this sign and it said, so I'll put it up here, something to the effect of, we serve food in this restaurant that contains this chemical which is known to cause cancer. And it was like listed right at the buffet, the beginning of the buffet. And I was like, what the hell? So I looked up this chemical.
And this wasn't even smogeny sear. This was
No, it was a chemical that is not present in vegetables, but if you grill the vegetables, they get brown. It's in the brown. That chemical causes cancer. How do you feel about that being listed at a restaurant? Does that not kill your mood?
Yeah, I mean, if the vegetables aren't even safe, then what do we have left? And you know, once everything becomes dangerous, then you just start tuning it out, right?
You give up. Again, I'm all for information, but it just kind of like ruined the mood of the eating.
Does the allergen list ruin your mood?
No, that's true, but I'm not allergic to anything. So in the Czech Republic, they have the allergen list on menus. I don't know if that's a legal requirement, but it's helpful. It's certainly helpful for tourists as they're trying to figure out what's in a typical dish.
Yeah.
So another thing that we had to do when we went back to America is figure out our phone situation. And so I just didn't use my phone at all, but how did you solve your phone situation?
It's unbelievable. So I bought a prepaid SIM card in Florida, and at the AT&T shop, popped it into my extra phone, and within hours I started receiving phone calls. No one knew my number. It was brand new. Who were these people calling me? Well, they wanted to sell me a warranty for the car I didn't own. They wanted to give me interest me in with some new app, or it was just the solicitation and the scams and the spam phone calls were overwhelming. So
they're actual phone calls,
yeah,
not just texts.
So, and this is not just phone calls, it's text messages that are inappropriate for children. Just automatically, and Jen will probably have to put up a redacted copy of one of these text messages, but I mean,
it's almost like your email spam folder, but just coming in calls.
Right. So it's unbelievable.
So you are not the only person to experience this, because
this is nationwide.
Yeah. So our friends and family, we'd be talking to them and they'd kind of look at their phone, and because it would vibrate and it would be some spam, and they were just like, oh, it's spam. And they weren't like appalled and enraged by this. They just kind of live with getting calls from random numbers and not answering them.
Yeah. I got the phone so that I could reach out, I could call my friends, and while I was in America without having to deal with the international calls and all that. But none of my friends would answer my call because I had a temporary phone number
that they didn't know,
that they didn't have in their contact list, and so they would just look at it, assume I was spam, and then hang up. And so I'd just have to call before someone would finally answer the phone for me. And I was, probably the one of 100th call they got that day, and I was the actual person they knew. So, yeah. I mean, basically, unless you're in someone's contact list, no one's answering the phone anymore. And that doesn't happen in Czech Republic. We get some marketing calls, but those are only from companies that we already do business with.
Right. Like our cable company wants to know if we want to upgrade, but we're already a customer.
Right.
So those were just a few of the sort of reverse culture shocks that we experienced on this trip home. Some of them were totally new. Some of them we just forgotten about because we've lived here for so long and are slowly becoming Czech.
Yeah.
So if you have ever experienced reverse culture shock, either in the United States or in the Czech Republic or in any other country, let me know in the comments below. Uvidíme se příští týden. Ahoj!